everybody, and welcome back to the Burnettwork and to Positive Fandom. I am your host, Mmmm, and we are here again for PGS Moving Image. I want to welcome the three guests here today, myself, Cameron, and Catherine. So good to see you both, Cameron and Catherine. Thanks for being here. And of course, this is the event that I've kind of been waiting for. At least I feel like I've been waiting for it because I haven't seen a film where I've liked it this much and been able to kind of celebrate its $1 billion milestone, which we know is very rare anyway. And for it to happen in 17 days is remarkable. And Catherine, I want to start with you because I've spoken to Cameron a lot on the channel about this movie, and of course the three of us are going to continue to talk about it. But Catherine, I want to get your thoughts and what you thought about this film, everything, because I haven't heard. I already actually know because you told me off screen, but I want it on here on the program. Please tell me what your thoughts and what you're thinking about this Barbie film in general. Anything you want to say about it? It's made $1 billion.
Yeah, I thought the movie was fun and funny. I thought Robbie and Gosling were perfectly cast. It seems that the image of Barbie Land, Kendom, and the real world is all as it would be seen through a child's eyes. And I thought the first half was really creative and inventive. And it was kind of sad because you could tell that Ken, at least the classic Ken, the Gosling one, just is in love with Barbie and he just lives to try and impress her, and she just constantly gives him the cold shoulder. Such that, as funny as it is when he's in the real world and the lady asks him for the time, it's like, yeah, it's really funny, but it's also really sad that he feels like that worthless. And but in the second half, I thought it started getting really predictable and telegraphed with what it was doing, and a bit overly simplistic with how to handle the material. And it started like literally monologuing the message of the movie to you with, America Ferrera's character saying blah blah blah, Sasha saying everything that she says to Barbie, and I'm thinking Sasha's being very erudite about this. I wonder if little girls are going to understand what she's really talking about. And I didn't necessarily like that when Barbie got back to Barbie Land and it turned into Kendom, that rather than having the epiphany of, oh, this is how we were treating the Kens, she instead just has a nervous breakdown, which isn't not a very strong protagonist in that sense. And it seemed like, other than on a very basic level talking about how, oh, Barbie, you represent consumerism and perfection, blah, blah, it doesn't really, the movie in a greater sense doesn't really have anything to say about that. Like when Barbie comes to all these realizations at the end of the movie, she just kind of gives a speech that says, oh, we shouldn't be defined by our jobs and accessories, we should have autonomy, the end, yay. But it's not really finding a way to apply that in a more interesting way to the movie. And I get it, because it's again seen through a child's eyes, because it's like, like Ken's version of manhood is obviously based on what a little boy might think that is, whereas the matriarchy is even satirized in the beginning for what little girls would think about it. I just didn't think it came together as well, and I didn't think they stuck the landing with the Ken character as much at the end, especially when he admits that, I've loved you my entire life, Barbie, and then she just rejects him outright, which is so sad because it's like he's literally giving you like everything he loves you, and you don't like care like in the slightest. And I thought that was kind of sad. And it's like Barbie gets her happy ending, but again, it's just like, let's just tell people, let's be autonomous. Yay! The end. And I'm just not really a fan of movies which kind of do that, where they just feel the need to have characters come as close as they can to breaking the fourth wall, to monologuing its message, rather than like, the key to film a show, don't tell, like demonstrate that somehow. So I didn't think the second half was as creative as the first. Still a fun movie, pretty funny. I gave it 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you shared your opinion. And of course, there are different views of this film. And I, love this film, Catherine. I absolutely love it. And every time I watch it, I do see different things in the film. Something that I think is very interesting is that I was not expecting the film to make $1 billion. I thought it would do well, but I just was like, it's so rare that a film makes this amount. Why do both of you think it was able to reach the $1 billion amount and the projected amount, which I think they said might be something like 1.4 or 1.6? Why is it still going strong? Catherine or Cameron?
Well, so let me say, I think it reached $1 billion exactly for the reasons that Catherine is critiquing it. right? And because I will say I love this movie. I think Catherine is a very intelligent commenter. That's why I love being on with her. My view is give it a 6 out of 5. I think it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. It's a movie that I would aspire to write as a filmmaker. I've now seen it twice. I'm going to go see it a third time tonight, hopefully with my mother, take a mom event, and that's why I'm all dressed up in pink for that. Masculine pink. It's got that. But I actually think that the Catherine is right on the story. It does become expository in the second half, and I think it's because a lot of people don't get satire, and Greta Garwig understood that, and so she had to put it in words to make sure that people understand it. That the patriarchy is made up. That's said in words. Barbie hurts Ken's feelings and takes him for granted. That's said not just in words; it's said in song. I went back and listened to that song again. That great song that culminates Ken's arc, where he's like, "I'm just Ken." Right? It's become a huge blockbuster song now. People are just listening to it all the time. Right?
Number one in the UK, I think.
And I've listened to it as lyrics because I'm going to talk a little bit about songs in today's celebration of the $1 billion because I'm taking songwriting classes right now, and we've been discussing Barbie songs in the class, right? And I'm getting a lot of very interesting insights from my colleagues and my professors. But that song says it very clearly. I'm just Ken, Oh, there we go. She's still in the box. Is that stereotypical Barbie? Looks stereotypical Barbie.
Yes, it is stereotypical Barbie. It's the Barbie you get. Yes, this is her. This is the Margot Robbie Barbie doll that I bought. That goes with the movie. It has a fold out, so it looks like her Barbie.
Oh, it goes, yeah, because it is the Margot Robbie dress, right? Which is lovely, and all the costumes are lovely. She in the second half there's a lot of expository there's monologues, there's songs that say it very clearly what the message of the movie is, and still with all that done, there's a small minority of people that still tell me they didn't get the movie at all. With all of that being said, if she had made it any more, hidden in satire and show not tell, I think it would have confused a lot of average people in the audience who would have taken the surface level message. And I think that the very fact Gerwig understands her audience. She's like, we are in such a polarized place talking about male-female relationships for a decade now, maybe 20 years now, that people perhaps need to hear it in words, and then they'll understand that I'm not an anti-male person. This movie's not anti-male, and sadly, a small portion of people still don't get it, right? Even though it's in the words, it's in the dialogue, it's in the songs, right? I don't know how much more explicit you have to be when you say things straightforwardly what it's about, right? But I think that was the wise choice on her part, and the result speaks for itself. It's crossed $1 billion in 17 days. I went to see the Meg 2 on Friday night. With a friend, and we were at the Sherman Oaks Mall, and still on a Friday night, 2 weeks into this, the mall is flooded with people wearing pink and a lot of families. What really touched me as I was talking to a grandmother there with her teenage grandchildren. The parents didn't come. It was a grandmother-grandchildren bonding thing that she brought. And, because one of the themes of this movie that's very important is respect of the elderly. It's not just a flashing moment. There's multiple scenes. And Rhea Perlman reflects that. She appears as the elderly creator of Barbie. And there's the respect for generations. There's a deep respect and reverence for age and wisdom, which we haven't really seen in a long time. And that's what I think is hitting people. So yes, Catherine's right. It is very explicit. And I would only add that I think it is intentionally set up to not resolve certain things because Greta wanted a sequel. The next movie is Ken. The next movie would probably be called Barbie and Ken, right? And it would be, and again, I hope she does it because I don't trust anyone else to do this, right? And so then as people on my Patreon have been commenting, there are all these great ideas for what that movie could be. Ken on his journey to becoming truly masculine in a wise way, where he was left with a lesson at the end of the movie. Next movie is have him get involved with the Hot Wheels, have him, make it Fast and the Furious Ken, right? Using the other toys in the Mattel world, and you could have something, you could have something like Toy Story that goes on multiple movies. Hopefully they'll know when to stop, because I'm not sure Toy Story knew when to stop, right? And so hopefully they don't push it past the point of saturation. But I still think there's a lot to talk about these dynamics that these dolls allow us to talk about.
Yeah, and I agree, Cameron. I think that Catherine's review is maybe the most comprehensive and accurate review I've heard of the film ever. It explains everything, and it does kind of explain how the film does appear, let's say, to change its tone and jump into a completely different feel. sort of the latter half doesn't necessarily feel the same as, let's say, the 2/3 of the film, and that's fine. You know, that I think that was Greta's decision. It was very deliberately done. And you know, even I admit it's not a perfect film, but I do love this film, and I am fascinated by what they've done with production design. Cameron, you mentioned respect for our elders, and you know, of course, the three of us recognize this lady who's in the film. Her name is Anne Roth, who's a famous fashion designer here. This famous bench scene that Greta fought to have in the film. We were talking, I think we might have mentioned it before. There's Anne Roth. She's a famous costume designer. She designed the clothes for 9 to 5.
Wow.
Just so you know, how over 139 films I think she's worked on. And there she is in the film as maybe one of the most iconic persons in the film.
Did she design Barbie costumes?
She did not. It was a different, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't believe she did the designs for this movie, but she's well known for doing costume designs in other films. And I'm not quite sure her placement in the film. I'm assuming that she's also an actress as well. I'd have to look more on her IMDb.
Well, I mean, she just had a couple of lines that was all that was needed. She actually only had one line that was all that was needed, and it's very powerful. It's just 2 words.
It says she's a good friend of Greta Gerwig, and she got the cast. She got casting from Greta, and she is a 2-time Academy Award-winning person. She's the oldest person to win an Oscar for costume design. I don't know which movie. It might have been Ma Rainey's.
It was.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Well, Catherine, what do you think about the notion of the fact that while it is true that there are things like this in the film where I'm enjoying myself like crazy, right? You know how many times I've opened this doll and looked at it and played with it. Aside from, let's say, merchandise that has been selling like crazy, you go to the theater, people are buying these popcorn buckets for $65. They're buying clothing. They're doing all sorts of fun stuff, Barbie barbecues. I have friends who they're like, we're going to the 5 o'clock show, and after that, we're going to the bar, and then we're going to have specialty cocktails, Barbie specialty cocktails. What about something like this, Catherine, that appears in a film where I wasn't expecting to see this? It's lovely. It's a lovely scene, but it seems like the film does have some special moments. What do you think, Catherine?
And it does, kind of, because they're trying to provide her guidance, and then you have the Rhea Perlman character also trying to provide guidance and showing up back at the end, playing the role of course, Barbara Handler. But I thought some of those moments were a bit few and far between, because, again, I find that when you have to resort to explicitly telling your audience what the movie is about, that's, to me, the epitome of laziness in a script, that you think your audience is too stupid to understand the message. And
they are too stupid. Look at them. They're saying
intelligent enough to understand it. I don't need her lecture. I don't need somebody breaking the fourth wall and lecture. I can figure it out well enough and easily enough.
You are an intelligent person. I've been arguing with stupid people for 2 weeks now who we literally say to them, the dialogue says the patriarchy is made up. They're like, really? It said that? I don't remember that.
That's the thing. I'm not in favor of catering to the dumbing down of the cinematic of the general audiences, which is kind of what other filmmakers have been campaigning against with the recycling everything off the Hollywood, off the the conveyor belt blockbuster machine. And I was excited for this movie because I had no idea what it was going to be, and I think that has a lot to do with why it made $1 billion. Is because like when they tell you, oh, if you like Barbie, you'll love this. If you hate Barbie, you'll love this. It's like, what? It's like, how does that even compute? And the fact that there had never been a live action Barbie film. So it's like, well, it's live action. You're attracting all this talent on both sides of the camera to the project, and it's a huge IP behind it. And the fact that it's sort of brand new territory for this type of brand to go into live action. It's like, well, what is it? And when you have that level of curiosity combined with the whole Barbenheimer phenomenon, it's really going to take off. And then the fact that the movie is quite fun to watch and fun and silly and all that kind of thing. It's enjoyable. I just think that they could have been a bit more creative in the second half of the film. And it's like, that's why I like movies where I don't feel like, if it's like, for instance, last year when I saw Top Gun Maverick, I was impressed by the jet scenes, but the rest of the movie I didn't really care for because it felt like any given scene in that movie, you knew what the next 5 scenes were going to be. And you knew what every given character relationship was going to be. And when something is telegraphed to death like that, I just don't really respond as well to it. And I thought the second half of this movie was doing that. But, clearly people are responding to it.
Yeah, it was doing that. And, and I'm sorry to be the grumbly guy about this. I just think that this was a movie made for the general masses. I absolutely respect that you don't want to dumb this down, but this wasn't made for Oppenheimer level of discussion. It's made for something deeper. It's made for not discussion.
I agree that you could have a deep discussion about these things. I just don't feel it needed to be dumbed down to that level. I think they could,
but even then, people are choosing not to get it. I mean, if she had given
just as it, are they genuinely not getting it, or are they choosing not to get it? Because there's certain, critics and stuff out there who are catering to a particular audience who are, of course, gonna either pretend that they don't get it because they know that's what their audience wants to hear. You know what I mean? It's like, did they?
Well, that's been my criticism. You're absolutely right, Captain. That's been my very vocal criticism because I've been very active on YouTube. I've been pulling away from a lot of channels in the last several months. This is one of the few channels I love to be on. I love interacting with you because I feel like I'm talking to someone. I wouldn't even say intellectual equal. I think you're smarter than me, and I love this kind of this conversation. Yeah, there's a lot of bad faith conversation right now. Sadly, that bad faith conversation is infesting, a lot of fans who I think would enjoy this film. And they're literally saying all kinds of silly things that clearly show me that they haven't seen the movie. And they're just regurgitating silly things.
Yeah, that's actually a discussion that I had on my channel, Phantasmagorium, with Stephen Scott on there. They're like, yeah, if we wanted to be a hate-watching channel, we can have tons of views and get a lot of ad revenue, but that's not what we want to do. We don't want to contribute to further toxifying fandom and discourse. That's not what we're into. That's why we like having fun and talking about movies like we're doing here. I just feel that with this being, obviously Barbie was going to be embraced no matter what, because it's a live action Barbie film. And you got the level of talent there. People are going to be going to see it. I just kind of wish that more filmmakers would maybe push against the oversimplification of ideas. Like, for instance, you could see something as simple as a Marvel movie conveying similar messages without having to have the character, break the fourth wall and tell you, this is what our movie's about. And Barbie just did it several times. I was like,
It did it several times, and I'm glad it did it because that's why I think it's $1 billion. I think it's just made for general. My mom is an intelligent woman, but she doesn't do subtext a lot on movies and TV shows. I've watched.
Yeah, that
makes sense to her. She'll understand it. When the speech about the struggles of what a woman is, she'll get it. She's went through all those struggles in her life. Right, she just wanted to be a homemaker. She had to work 2 jobs, and we talked about that on Oppenheimer. Right, she never wanted the life she had and the struggles of that. I think that speech will touch her. We'll see.
I think that's also why films like Top Gun Maverick and the 2 Avatar movies, because they have a very simple, universal type story which people can understand, and that's why they're embraced, around the world to the tunes of billions of dollars of box office revenue. So yeah, I totally get it.
And I'm so glad both of you are making these excellent points about the film. And I agree. I actually agree with both of you. I think that it would be great if let's say the films could go a little bit further. Maybe they will eventually. At some point, we'll see a certain level of production that does kind of surpass a more simplistic design. What I'm kind of curious about is what you guys thought about the production design of the film. And as of course, we know that there was a change towards let's say the last third of the film, but overall, the way that the look of this film, which I think if it didn't look right, no matter what message was in the film, it wouldn't have done as well. What do you guys think?
Well, I know that there was a global shortage of pink paint because the amount that they bought to work on this movie, which is encouraging that shows that they built the sets for real and they wanted it to look, because even though they're trying to give it this kind of pastel-y toy-like atmosphere, they still wanted to build it for real so you could tell that it was there, which I could appreciate. And I think the set design also, again, contributes to how each person sees Barbie Land versus Kingdom versus the real world. Like my friend Ernesto said that when he watched the movie, he thought that the real world was almost the most cartoonish of all of them because of and I was like, well, yeah, because it's like,
you're right,
the way it's shot, yeah, which is because of the whole movie seen through a child's perspective, even the way the Mattel executives behave. It's like, yeah. And so, yeah, I thought
that's how a little kid thinks that corporations work, right? I mean,
right, and that's why I absolutely loved the set design and the costumes and everything down the board. The design of the movie was fantastic.
Yeah, and I have to say, and this is something else that, and Cameron, of course, I'm going to let you say what you want to say in a second, and I apologize for cutting across both of you, honestly. What I also find very interesting is that for a film that does have a lot in it. Yes, this production design was amazing. It looks incredible. There are different layers of in the film, and every time I watch it, I try and catch and look very carefully to see if I notice anything different. But I almost feel like they knew what Barbie was going to look like and what they had to achieve from a realistic point of view, and then to go even further and create it so that you could have actual human beings in these spaces was another layer. But then to also put on a third layer, let's say like with Weird Barbie, I thought was very interesting. Or to even pull in, because there are so many different kinds of Barbies, inevitably, while the movie does focus a lot on stereotypical Barbie, it focuses a lot on a bunch of other Barbies. So many characters. What do you think of the treatment there, Catherine?
Well, I know that there were a lot of inside references. I'm not familiar with all of the different various dolls they've had over the years, but I know the running joke with the Alan characters, there was only one variation of Alan, and it was very short-lived, which is why I like that in Michael Cera's performance, even his personality is reflected in that in terms of why he's not connected to anything. And again, you have all the different Barbies, and I admit I was a little confused for this weird existential relationship between the real world where the people play with their Barbie dolls and having an effect on the ones in Barbie Land. But that was a little interesting. But the way they all outcast Weird Barbie, and they're all, just obsessed with their own. That's why I thought the movie in that instance is where it was smart, where it's clear that because they've ostracized Weird Barbie, they're obsessed with, these beauty standards and all of that. But then other than Barbie at the end literally stating, oh, I'm sorry, Weird Barbie, we shouldn't have done this, and we shouldn't strive to these beauty standards. It's not really trying to comment on that to a greater extent. They're all so obsessed with beauty standards, and you get to the real world, and it is that kind of that cartoonish reflection of the same thing. But then I thought now that you've experienced the real world, we're going back into Barbie Land. Let's see, is this going to change the characters in some way? And it doesn't, because they go the direction of the whole Kendom thing rather than, well, let's see how would Barbie and Ken go into the real world affect how these other dolls, because if the idea is that the real people in the real world have an effect on the dolls in Barbie Land, then would Ken and Barbie coming back with these extra, existential experiences in the real world have an effect as well? Now with Ken, it's much more literal with the whole patriarchy thing. Whereas with Barbie, she just has, like when she breaks down in front of Sasha telling her off, and then she just breaks down in front of the Kendom thing again, rather than learning from it, which I thought was, well, isn't that kind of self-defeating to your message that Barbie's going to be intelligent and rise above all these stereotypes if she's just going to break down and cry every time she's faced with something she doesn't like? I mean,
the little girl says it. You're just going to give up, right? Ariana Greenblatt's character says it. You're just going to give up. The joke is her lying down, face down on the ground, which is how little girls drop their Barbies and they stop playing with them, right? That's the joke. And it's like, you're just going to lie there like that. And it shows Ariana Greenblatt, the human beings. It's the human beings that truly grow here. And the teenage girl comes to understand the lesson she initially resisted, because she's out spouting all this fake cultural Marxism of a 13-year-old, right? But the reality is she's in any position to fight a revolution. And her mother says, I can't fight everything. And maybe I just have to take the little wins I can get. And that's a lesson Ariana teaches Barbie.
Yeah.
I also loved the opening of the film and the way that it's commenting about how there was that to me was the most, the strongest signifier of what Barbie actually represented in the real, when they made Barbie in real life in the 50s when the dolls came along, because it went from being very much training girls to be mothers and stuff, little baby dolls and stuff like that, to being something more about yourself, which was obviously a very different message back in the 50s and much more well received, whereas today the Sasha is very she's very critical of, oh, you represent all of this perfection, blah blah blah. But well, no, because if you go back to the 50s 60s when Barbie first hit the market, the idea of it celebrating female empowerment and different female jobs and stuff was a very brand new concept for female toys for girls and stuff. And that was so I liked how they kind of echoed that in the opening scene, which is spoofing 2001. And it's which is kind of why I wanted and kind of expected that Barbie was going to counter Sasha by saying, well, in Barbie Land, this is all really great because all of the, the matrix, all the stuff that we're able to do and all the stuff that we represent, and maybe being more of a wake-up call that the real world doesn't really feel that way anymore. But again, it's doing it in the simplest way possible of talking about it and not actually
It's doing it in the simplest way possible, and doing it through fun stuff, doing it through songs. doing it through comedy, doing it through for me there is, I mean, even the dance off, of people in the comments are talking about how much they loved the Ken dance off. I thought it's hilarious watching it a second time. I mean, it's really well choreographed. It's up because we learned that Greta Gerwig studied Grease amongst other classic films, so this feel has a very Grease-like feel here. This sequence here, which that we have on screen right now, is clearly taken from Saturday Night Fever, which she also said she studied. There's a disco vibe to this, and and so yeah, they're the symbolism of this is done, with Ken, doing his, push sing-a-thons, right? All the messages there symbolically. And then even with that, some people weren't going to get it. And so she said, let me make this clear. Let me give a few monologues. And it was the monologues when I was sitting in the audience, it was the women that started cheering at the women's monologue. And then the guys started cheering at the Ken song. So the people are getting it. Maybe it's being presented too bluntly, but it's being presented at the level the audience wants, apparently.
Yeah, and certainly that's something that I do want to ask because, of course, we can go to Rotten Tomatoes. If we go to Rotten Tomatoes, I think it was at 80% or something like that. For the general public, let's say, who, what their opinion is about this Barbie film. And of course, I don't really know. I honestly don't know what everybody's opinion is in regards to the public, other than from Rotten Tomatoes, because that's the only place that I know that would talk about what the public feels. I know that on YouTube there's different opinions about the film, and that's fine. Everybody can have their different opinions, and that's great. But the audience score, let's say if it's 10,000, I guess that's a good amount of people to say that it's we know what their opinion is, and also the fact that people are still going to see the film. I'm assuming that people like it because it's at 88% and 84% audience score. So do you think that the audience in general is liking this film? I know that they spent $1 billion to go see it, but do you think that's going to continue? It seems like that's the case. It's been 17 days. I can't even believe it. 17 days so far. It's not a whole bunch of time. What do you both think?
Yeah, I mean, the show times are still, a lot of them at all the theaters. As long as it keeps selling, they're going to keep screening it. So, and I don't know if what Warner Brothers is going to use for their home media schedule. I think it'd benefit if they push it out till December or so that way the movie could keep building, making more money. So, and then it's also going to depend on what type of competition it has in the coming weeks, which it doesn't have much in terms of the type of audience that goes. I mean, this is obviously appealing to general audiences, but I don't see movies like, say, the Meg 2 posing a threat to it at the box office, even though that also appeals to general audiences. Or the horror film Last Voyage of the Demeter, I don't see that posing a threat to it. So I think it's going to keep chugging for quite a while.
Cameron?
Yeah, I mean, again, I can only say what I've been now to see other movies. I went and saw Meg 2, which I enjoyed. Nice, fun, dumb movie. I enjoyed it. Right? I watch shark movies. I love shark movies. I enjoyed it very much. Right? I enjoyed the first one. I enjoyed the second one. But I went there, and my Meg audience was a handful of people. And the Barbie theaters all looked full to me. People were coming out, streaming out, all in pink. I was at the Sherman Oaks Mall, people dressed in pink everywhere. I bought tickets for tonight for my mom and myself in the Santa Monica theater just down the street from us. It was already almost sold out for a Sunday night showing 2 weeks into this, right? So this is going to go on for a while, and I posted on my Patreon. Maybe I can find the link and post it in the chat of a very interesting analysis breaking down the day for day gross domestically and worldwide of Barbie versus Super Mario Brothers, which it will likely topple very soon as the biggest movie of the year, and Top Gun Maverick, which was, I believe, the biggest movie of last year. It was 1.4 billion. I don't know if anything beat that, but that's what it was. And if you look at the numbers, they are consistently higher each day than they were on the same days of those other movies, and they seem
so
to
there's no drop off. In other words,
no drop off. I mean, if on a certain day, if on a certain day it made $5 million, $30 million worldwide for Super Mario Brothers, and 31 million for Top Gun, on that same day into the release, it made 35, right? So it's consistently higher. and each time it's consistently higher. The only at the beginning it's a little bit off because I believe Meyer Brothers. I believe you can confirm this, Catherine, if you know. I think Super Mario Brothers was released earlier, like on a Wednesday. It was middle of the week. Is that right?
Yeah, it was the first Wednesday in April.
Mhm.
Okay, so it was released on Wednesday. So they had initially Super Mario Brothers has this extra tens of millions that come from being on a Wednesday, and then Barbie arrives on Thursday, and so it's behind because it didn't have that extra one day. But then very quickly it starts shooting past that, right? And so, and again, I'm just seeing the cultural reaction to it. I'm seeing it with my own eyes. I mean, I'm in, going to these malls with a lot of Mexican families. The big macho father with the teenage girls is dressed in pink. Here I am. I'm a pretty conservative, think I'm a masculine guy. We're in pink to have fun with my mom tonight. It's a fun thing. It's a family event thing. And so I agree with Catherine. I think they should keep home video and other release for some months down the line. I think they can milk this. I'm beginning to hear projections that it could get as high as 1.6 billion. I'm going to go out there on a limb and say I think it can get to 2 billion. I think it can.
Oh my gosh. Well, I do just want to thank Myth Dustards for 199 super chat, who says, how do you compare Barbie to the Lego movie? Now, there's a lot of Lego movies, Myth Dustards. Is there a particular one you're talking about? Is it a Barbie Lego? Is it a Star Wars Lego? The Lego movies are incredibly popular, and I don't know anybody who doesn't like the Lego movies and or the Lego games. So that is a piece of merchandise right there that is very popular. Just tell me what it is. I know you commented about how you liked how Barbie responded to the Cold War, and also that you wish they had the I Love Lucy Barbies. They do have I Love Lucy in combination. How do I know this? Because I've been looking. They do have Lucy and Ricky combination Barbie dolls together. Now, I don't know anything about Star Trek Barbies. I also don't know anything about 1/6 scale Barbies, which a lot of collectors are saying now that it's hit 1 billion. There are enough collectors in the 1/6 scale community who want to see a 1/6 scale Barbie, and that hope that Hot Toys can work out some kind of license with Barbie. I wonder if there's going to be a third party version of a Margot Robbie. I'd like to see a better version. So far, the only versions of Margot Robbie I've seen that look exactly like her are the ones for Suicide Squad. And, those are somewhat more exaggerated. They don't actually, it's obviously Margot Robbie, but it doesn't look as much like Margot Robbie does here. This is, if you saw Margot Robbie in the street, she looks exactly like this. They didn't change her and alter her too much in any way. And that's exactly why I think it's so fascinating, because she does feel like it's Barbie come to life. It feels like I just took her off the shelf and made her real in my mind. So just let me know which one you're talking about, Myth Dusters, in regards to your super chat, which Lego film. I'll try and answer it. I haven't seen every Lego film, and we'll talk about it, but I haven't seen them all. And I do thank you for the $1.99 super chat. Someone else says Mike loves cats, as the movie's a win for everybody. There's all different opinions about the movie, and yeah. So this is a celebration stream about the $1 billion. So I do want to mention that, and certainly it is great hearing everybody's comments. Okay, here it is. Mythbuster says, I was talking about the first Lego movie, Lego movie to Barbie film. Do you know what this is referring to, Cameron or Catherine?
Well, I think it sent an earlier he or she. I don't know if it's a he or she. Forgive me. The person had sent an earlier a chat saying that, what do you think of the first Lego movie? I ask your forgiveness. I haven't seen that, so I can't give a commentary. Catherine, have you seen the first Lego movie? Can you do a story comparison?
I have not.
Okay, I'm so sorry. We don't know. Let's see, Lego Movie 2014, and let's just see what this is. The Lego Movie 2014. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like it did okay with a grossing $468 million with a worldwide with a budget against 60 million. That certainly is impressive. Now, it is something to think about. I think it is interesting because, of course, I'm guessing Miss Duffords is bringing this up because it's a franchise, right, Catherine and Cameron? And that's very good for a movie based on a toy. Let's say this is a movie that's based on a toy. Certainly, it's done very well for that. And I think, Lego is one of the top selling toys out there. I don't know where it ranks in regards, let's say, to Barbie, but Lego's doing very well. So that is very good to note. And okay, so listen to this. He or she says, I was talking about the first Lego movie to Barbie. They share similar characteristics and storytelling. Well, Cameron and And Catherine, we're going to have to go ahead and look and see what that story is like, and try and address that later on and see whether there are other toy stories that do share these similarities in storytelling. And thank you for bringing that to our attention. It's something that if you had not mentioned it, I wouldn't have known about it, and I'm glad that you did. Maybe Tom Jr. Jackson knows about it, since Tom, I have a feeling, knows what it is. But
well, Tom, please put some comments in the comments to give us more information. I do know that that Lego generally seem to have a positive public reaction. Whenever I hear people speaking of it, they speak of it quite affectionately. I don't hear the same critiques I'm hearing about Barbie. I just don't hear them. So I think people gave it more of a shot than some people are giving this movie, in my opinion. But it seems to have a positive vibe, at least in the fandom.
Absolutely. So, Tom, please do give us your opinions about what that was about, so we at least know a little bit more about that. And I do want to kind of talk about this merchandising situation. And not only, were there some predictions by some that there would be drop-offs in the box office, there wasn't, that there wouldn't be interest in it. And of course, there's a huge amount of interest, maybe the most interest I've seen in ages. But there was questions about it hurting the merchandise, hurting Barbie as a brand, hurting Mattel as a brand. And I do want to mention that Mythbusters mentions how you can't get the toys, you can't get any of these things. They're sold out everywhere. QVC sold them every place, let's say Hot Topic, all these places, Mattel sells them, Entertainment Earth. I managed to get the popcorn bucket the other day. I bought this in June, this particular one, and it has a fold out, so you could put this, like if you have a Detolf shelf, and you could put this in your Detolf behind the doll and display it and kind of enjoy that too. I also bought the Ken. He hasn't gotten here yet, or else I would have shown you the Ken. But the point that I'm making is I do buy Barbie dolls from time to time. I'm a collector. And as a collector, this film is huge. I'm going to get this whole set of dolls and everything. The merchandise is huge. Pink is huge. I've got pink nail polish on. Cameron, you said you went to the movie. You saw people wearing pink. And Catherine, I have a feeling you've seen this wave of pink coming through. Are they making as much? I suspect I suspect that they've sold over $1 billion in merchandise. What are your thoughts on the merchandise side?
I don't know who, like, the merchandise in terms of the actual Mattel company versus people buying, like, say, similar clothes or whatever that are pink that aren't by the company. Like, certainly all the bars having Barbie cocktails and stuff are just tie-ins that they themselves are sponsoring to try and bring in more business. I doubt they collaborated with Warner Brothers or Mattel to do that. So, I to be honest, before this movie was announced, I had not heard the name Barbie or even given it a second thought, probably since seeing Toy Story 3 in 2010. I mean, I haven't known kids to play with Barbies or stuff as much anymore. I didn't have any clue if it was still a big brand as big today in the age of, little smart tablets and little digital things that parents give their kids now to distract them. So it might be causing I mean, obviously there's an interest there, so maybe it is.
Well, I can share an anecdote. It's an anecdote. I haven't confirmed it personally, but I trust the person saying it. So I'm on the screenwriter boards, and generally the consensus is people are loving Barbie on professional screenwriters boards. I've created like a special channel on the boards where we're just having Barbie discussions, and where I've posted several of our videos. People are watching them. Big screenwriters are watching your video. They're watching it. They're really enjoying it. And I've just posted this link. So hopefully some of our screenwriter friends are watching this right now. But one of them, very, very successful showrunner, really, really successful guy, was posted a few days ago that he has a friend who works in corporate at Mattel, right? And that they had created just a few hundred I am Kenuff sweatshirts as a joke, right?
Yes.
They sold out instantly. They sold out within an hour. And then they're like, wait a minute. And then they ordered their company to make more. And so they made a few thousand. They sold out that day. And so now there's a Kenuff, frantic, we got to create more Kenuff stuff, because they didn't even realize this. Because, it's only one line he says at the end of the movie, I'm Kenuff, right? It's just one line, but it clicked with people because, it clicked so well with people that Mattel's like, wait a minute. It's a little bit like, perhaps it was much more egregious that Disney did not have Baby Yoda toys ready for the release of The Mandalorian, because I could see that people would want to buy that. But, that's how, unfortunately, Lucasfilm is often behind the curve, whereas they simply just didn't expect that one sentence, one joke, I am Kenuff, would create a frenzy. And now they're creating Kenuff product and selling.
Yeah. Yeah, and Catherine, you're absolutely right about the side hustles, if you want to call it.
Mhm.
Everybody has seems to have an opportunity to make money off of it, and if let's say if you just want to order a Mattel Barbie and you want the Margot Robbie version that I have here, the one that I'm showing you, I
Mhm.
have it here in front of me. There's a picture of it on the screen. You can go to the movies and get a popcorn bucket that looks like this car, and it's $65 for both. I was just showing, just so you can see it there. You can
Mhm.
go to the
Mhm.
movies and buy it and get that popcorn bucket for
Mhm.
$65 along with the Barbie doll. So now you're taking home merchandise. It's adorable merchandise. Like you could give this away. Let's say you didn't want to keep it, but it is kind of adorable. At least I think it is, for merchandise, and it will continue to promote the film. The doll resembles very strongly Margot Robbie. It's not an exact match, but it's very good.
Mhm.
I think it's great that they're doing that, and that's just one of the popcorn buckets that they offer. There's a number of different ones. Tom says that Barbie is about a character that turns out to be different than the others, and the Lego movie had a similar character arc. Well, that is interesting, Tom. Junior Jackson,
Mhm.
thank you so much for doing that. And Pepper, I can't read this. Pepper Dion, could you show the popcorn bucket? This is the popcorn bucket I have. It's in a box. I didn't take it out of the box, but that's the popcorn bucket I have. But I am going to go so far as to say that I even bought the Hot Wheels car. There's a tiny Hot Wheels
Oh, there's a
car.
Hot Wheels car. I'll
Yes,
get that. Can you show me that? I'm
yes, I
suddenly, as
can.
a guy, I'm very excited about a Hot Wheels car. A Barbie Hot
It's
Wheels.
Now, yes, and it's a smaller. I'm gonna thank you for putting up with this, Catherine, because the whole thing has spurred this kind of excitement about a film, excitement about merchandise, excitement
Mhm.
about toys, and we've been seeing situations where people are not excited about toys, and they're not excited about films, and they're not excited about merchandise, and I like to see this type of fun
Mhm.
stuff happening. So let me just pull up the Hot Wheels, and I am pulling up an Amazon page because that's where I got mine, but you can actually get it from
Yeah.
a place called Entertainment Arts, I think. Let me
Entertainment
just
Arts. Okay.
show. Yeah, and I'll just show it just one second. I'm pulling it up now. This is the Barbie movie Hot Wheels um, car, and it's a smaller car. Where is it? Just when you always want to find it, there it is. It sells for well, there's a certain price here, but what I am going to say, if you go to Entertainment Earth, you can find it for even less. I'm not going to necessarily pull up
Oh,
the
I'm
Entertainment.
seeing at the website. There's some for $1.99. They must be very smart.
Yes, yes. So I did just want to mention it to you guys. There, here it is. This is the Barbie Hot Wheels car, and I bought it says it's a 1950 Corvette. Look at how cute that is. So yes, Cameron, there's a Hot Wheels. It's going on and on and on and on when it comes to what we're seeing. There's even, let's say if you go to Forever 21, if you go to Macy's. Macy's has their own line of Barbie clothes. Some of them are official merchandise, some of them are not. But it's going and it's continuing to go. Yeah, it's interesting. One person says, oh, this is very important. Mike loves cats says Barbie is doing with merchandise the opposite of what, let's say, those she who shall not be named um, did to Star Wars. Well, let's just say that they didn't do the best for their merchandise. And I think that this, even going to the movie, and of course, it's not the only movie that has merchandise you can get, but the fact that it's sold out, that it's hard to get this. I think Entertainment Earth has, you can pre-order it when they get it back in stock, Cameron and
Mhm.
Catherine. If you wanted the doll or anything else like this, you can order it there. But my point is, it's exciting. This movie has created this incredible amount of buzz and I think momentum, not just for the Barbie movie. This is not going to have just an impact for Barbie. Yesterday we were talking about Oppenheimer, and we had an incredibly deep discussion about what I call the trifecta, these three films: Barbie, Oppenheimer, and The Sound of Freedom, that is having a profound effect over entertainment. I don't think I've ever seen a situation like this where the three are doing so well. They're very different films. It's for different, it has different messages for each one. And it is a very special time. And he goes on to say, I think the marketing for Barbie has been off the charts through social media with Barbenheimer. Now, I also am kind of curious as to, oh, Ron C. Okay, let's see what Ron C has to say. Thank you, Ron C. I wanted to say, yes, Ron C for a 1999 super chat. Hi, Ron C. Thank you so much for the generous super chat here. We appreciate it. Says, hello, Artem, Catherine, and Cameron. Born in 69, favorite year to be born. My sister had the majority of all Barbies. Personal opinion, the producer should have kept the film in Barbie world, a Barbie 2, and then do a time warp. You know, that is a consideration, Ron. See, a lot of people have been saying that. I think what's really interesting, Catherine and Cameron, is how people have looked at the ending of the film, where a lot of people said they want, obviously, Barbie to be with Ken. That's not an unusual desire. But many people wanted things to be different, wanted to see different things in the film. But I think we're going to be getting those things in future films. What do you think, Catherine?
Perhaps if it depends. Well, it also depends on, do the actors all want to come back for sequel after sequel? Do you have a good enough idea? Because now you've done it once, are you going to be able to come up with a satire as effective to do it twice, to get people to keep coming back and watching the same thing? Or is it just going to become like a bland sequel after that? You know, so that's up in the air to see how that goes.
You know, I agree with Catherine that you have to be very careful about this. I would prefer this to be a one-off movie that is never replicated. I would really prefer that because I love this movie so much. I would be very sad to see it go on a decline, which we've kind of felt a little bit with Toy Story and recent versions of it. And so, you know, I hope if they do a sequel, which, you know, the economic pressures will be on Warner Brothers to do a sequel. And so I hope that Greta Gerwig, Noah Baumbach are the ones that write and the Greta directed. And I think the cast should return. Again, I think a sequel that follows Ken's journey, which I think has been set up. I am Ken Off, and Ken now exploring the journey of masculinity and maybe even winning over Barbie at the end of the second movie, because, you know, I think the lesson here is Ken doesn't know who he is yet. He's beginning to understand he has to find himself. That's not someone that's not a mature lover, right? And Barbie is just discovering what it's like to be human. So I think both of them are too raw and too early stage for a real healthy relationship. And a second movie should explore the possibility of how a real relationship could develop between them through maturation. If they do it, I hope they don't do anything.
Well, it also feels like a one-off, because if she wants to stay in the real world, then there's no real reason for her to go back to Barbie Land. I mean,
Correct.
There might be if the movie
pulled in against her will, unless she's pulled in against her will by the
right. Whereas if the movie is from Ken's perspective, and we could see how Barbie Land has changed for the better, and maybe for some reason he seeks out Barbie for whatever. But again, it would just feel like, okay, we get it. But if you're not able to add a new satirical spin to it, then you're just doing the same thing again, but not as good. Now, of course, they're going to do it anyway for the money. I remember how much, what's his name, Todd Phillips kept saying, "Don't worry, we won't do a sequel to Joker. It's a one-off, artsy and all that." Oh, of course, $1 billion, let's make a sequel, you know. And so the same might come around with Barbie, depending on what Greta Gerwig wants to do. I mean, yeah, they could try and do a sequel without her, but I don't think they would, because they recognize that they needed that for this movie. Or they'll do something completely different that's unrelated to the IP. They'll just try and capitalize on the success of this movie if she doesn't want to come back and do a different live-action Barbie movie with completely different cast and completely different story, which is also possible given the fact that it's made $1 billion in just 17 days.
Yeah, which would be tragic. It would be like the very amusing, fun movie and sexy movie Wild Things, which then spawned a dozen Wild Things sequels straight to DVD, which are essentially just porn, right? And the first movie is quite fun, right? And has a good cast, and then every other movie is just terrible. And I pray to God they don't do that.
When we were watching this film, there was a scene where Ken, and we're kind of getting, I suspect the next film is going to have a lot more to do with Ken than this one may have. In fact, it might just focus on him. And I hear people, yes, the car is the popcorn bucket. Yes. I hear a lot of people talking about Knuff and Kenergy. In the movie, they started to make toys that were, let's say, based on Ken. And all of a sudden, those toys started to sell very well, even surpass Barbie's toys in the film.
Well, they're based on Macho Ken. They're based on a new iteration of Ken as a extremely, patriarchal Ken, right? It's patriarchal Ken. And I've commented that, to me, that was another one of the subtle messages that Greta Gerwig was saying, is that boys have been deprived of male role models, both in their lives and in their toys, for a generation. And that if they're even given anything, even if it's an extreme parody of masculinity, they will take it because they need something. That's actually a very sensitive message. In my
Well,
opinion.
that was also an interesting point where in that portion of the film, the Mattel guys aren't really happy, despite the fact that they're making a bunch of money off the Ken stuff, and they want to return it to the status quo of Barbie being in charge, all that kind of stuff. And then by the end of the movie, they kind of forgot that because they kind of go back on that entirely. And it's like, oh, well, if this is better, I guess oh, yay, money. It's like, well, didn't you realize that before when you were like, I love the line.
But Captain, let me respond to that. I think I'm of the view that was done intentionally. I don't think Greta made a mistake. I think personally, I don't think there's any mistakes in this movie. I think every moment is choreographed, and I think that moment that you're describing is, it's actually meant to humanize and open up the hearts of the audience towards Will Ferrell as a CEO, because he's portrayed as a child's vision of the patriarchal CEO, right? And he always plays the same lovable buffoon that he plays here. But at the end of the day, he loves Barbie. He came into this business to promote Barbie, and he's actually not a capitalist in that sense, in that, he's not excited to see Ken make more money because he came in to do Barbie. That I think was an intentional message, because obviously when Ken abandons that, they're not going to make that toy anymore, but he's actually happy that they can go back to selling at least stereotypical Barbie.
Well, no, what I mean is that by the end of the film, he's not in favor of things going back. It's like he's changed his mind for some reason until one of his assistants tells him, but sir, we're making money up the yin yang. He's like, okay, we'll do it then. It's like,
and then that's a joke about
Ken. And he's defending the Barbie status quo by wanting to make things go back to Barbie. And now at the end of the movie, he's changed his mind because money.
That's a joke about capitalism. I mean, it's a little tweak on that. I mean, it's I have to actually give Mattel a lot of credit for letting themselves be the butt of the joke in this whole movie. I mean, Mattel let themselves be mocked throughout this movie, right? At
one point, the president of Mattel flew out to the studio because they were concerned about just a few lines of dialogue in the script, because they are very cautious about what they're going to let them do with their brand,
Sure. But so they approved of it, and they went along with the humor of it, which I give them credit for.
Yeah. I have to say that I think that since this film certainly they could have done a lot of other things with it, but Greta chose to do something. I feel like this was a little outside of the box. She didn't have to do this. This could have been a story like the one from, let's say, Mario Brothers. Something that stayed internal into Barbie land and she never left, and it was that kind of story. It could have been something like that. Would it have been enough if it was that kind of story? Would an ordinary story, something not so, let's say, subversive, which I guess could be called satirical, would something that was not in that realm have made as much money?
Well, the Mario Brothers movie wasn't trying to be a satire or anything like that. It was trying to be truly the first accurate representation of that brand, which the live action film obviously was not. And so that audience, which has always loved that IP, showed up in droves for that movie. And I think the opening of Nintendo World some months earlier helped further churn the marketing budget, or the marketing for that, and the popularity. Whereas with Barbie, they've already done so many animated Barbie movies that aimed at little kids and stuff. So if you just do that in live action, it's going to be like, oh, it's kind of the same thing but cheesy, but you can get away with doing some cheesy stuff if it's a satire. And this is a satire, and that's one of the reasons it works. And again, it's the marketing was capitalizing on people's intrigue as to what is this going to be. I mean, the fact that they said, if you hate Barbie, you will love this movie. It's like, what? But that if you love Barbie, you'll also love the movie, which seems like totally a contradictory statement. And that people are like, wow, I've never heard that before. And the idea that Mattel would let them put that in the marketing for their own brand, saying, come all, even if you hate us, come watch it. It's like, wow, it does create a level of intrigue as to what it is.
It does create intrigue. And and let's be honest, certainly the movie does present the critiques of Barbie. I mean, we've got the teenage girl saying that you've been destructive for women's image. I mean, that's been a critique that feminists have given Barbie for decades, right? And then there's a response. Well, Barbie's also had the first astronaut before there were female astronauts. So there's a response to that. Every point has a response. And the critiques of Barbie are done throughout the movie. She's even called, the Latina girl calls her white savior Barbie at some point, right? And so the critiques are there. And so if you come in with the agenda of Barbie is not good for women, you'll at least hear your critiques, right? And you'll hear them. and I think that you're right. I think it was brilliantly done. The only thing close to that kind of marketing, Captain, that I remember was, I think it was Austin Powers, when one of the Austin Powers movies was coming out at one of the Star. I think it might have been episode 1 of Star Wars, which we have to see where they coincided. One of the Austin Powers movies coincided with one of the prequel movies, and so the tagline was, "If you only see one," and this is a tagline for Austin Powers, "If you only see one movie this year, go see Star Wars. If you see 2 movies this year, go see Austin Powers." And that's a little self-ribbing, it's a little self-deprecatory. It's fun. And people went and saw Austin Powers too.
Were you both expecting dance numbers and music? Because I wasn't. I mean, this is what I've dreamed. This is my Barbie dreams, right? But I wasn't expecting to see, pretty much so many of the top, actors and actresses in today doing dance numbers, choreographed, synchronized dance numbers. I was not expecting that. And yeah, I love the dance numbers. Were you surprised that we had that in this film?
I didn't really have any thoughts one way or another about whether or not they would have musical numbers. I mean, I remember seeing it in the trailer, so it's like, oh, okay, I guess there's going to be musical numbers.
Cameron?
Well, I did see it in the trailers, but if anyone had seen, I posted, some people in the chat were talking about it. I believe one of our chat colleagues here, Maddie Daly, was talking about it, and I posted in the chat a link to an interview that Greta Gerwig did. I don't know if it was released before the movie or just coincided with the movie, but it's an interview she did of the 29 or 30 films that she watched intentionally to prepare for this movie. And most of them are classic films, like old Cary Grant, Audrey Hepburn films, right? Katharine Hepburn films, that kind of thing. And then she had a lot of musicals on there. Grease, right? And some of the classic musicals, Singing in the Rain. She says in the video, Singing in the Rain is her favorite movie of all time, right? She has classic musicals from Britain, from France. And so there's a lot of musicals on that list. And I hope people watch it, because there's a lot of great movies on there that many people have forgotten. And she's going back and resurrecting them and saying, you should watch this movie from the 1960s in Paris that inspired this scene or this prop. She literally came down to, like, the funny moment where spoiler alert, where Ken puts on a pair of cool sunglasses and puts on another pair because he's that cool. Those sunglasses were modeled after a scene in an old French movie that was, it was fun. And those sunglasses were literally taken from that movie, and they were very funny. And so I'm not surprised it's a musical. She's a musical person at heart, as she revealed in that video. And I think it works because it's a musical, because it's a fantasy. It is absolute fantasy. And, she made the comment, which I made in my very first review that I posted on my Patreon, on Instagram, where I said, this movie is essentially The Wizard of Oz. This is The Wizard of Oz. I said that just having watched it that night coming from the theater, and that, Barbie is just like the Scarecrow or the Tin Man or the Lion, where an inanimate object is used to explore human experience, right? And then in this video, she says the number one movie she said that she watched to prepare for Barbie was The Wizard of Oz, which is a musical, right? And she did all these wonderful, colorful backdrops of Barbie world that even people in the chat are commenting on. She says directly, I got that from Wizard of Oz. Those were all painted matte paintings of the Emerald City in the background. She said, I still think they're incredible. And that's how she did this movie, with all these painted matte paintings of Barbie Land in the background. And it's directly from the Wizard of Oz. So yeah.
Yeah, and some people are saying she referenced all that jazz. Certainly,
yeah, she mentioned that in the movie. She mentioned that in the video. All that jazz is it was one of the films she watched. Yes,
and certainly, it's something to think about. It is nice to see, directors being influenced. She must have had some influence to put so many layers in this film. And Cameron, I've spoken to you about how amazed I was by the script and how many layers there are to it. There's also layers in the production, and even like where we're watching this one snapshot where, let's say, having pink and white stripes on the floor, I'm sure there's some meaning to it. There's meaning in everything in this film. It's not just the, let's say, the spoken word in it. There's a lot of other messages. One of the things that, excuse me, surprised me, and I don't know if anyone around here who's seen it understands what I'm talking about, but they had a reference to Pride and Prejudice. And like I said, I was not expecting her to even make a comment about people who watch Pride and Prejudice or who were sort of like these extreme Jane Austen fans. There's a comment about the Snyderverse. I think that she also was influenced not by just movies, Cameron and Catherine, but also by all the important pop culture references of the day. Do you think that this film in itself will become somewhat significant because it makes references to modern pop culture in maybe in a not so subtle but subtle way?
I admit that I thought the Snyder Cut thing was a deep cut, because that's something that if you're in the YouTube space and critics, you're going to know what they mean by that. But if you're not, then it's like, well, what are they talking about? It's sort of like if you bring little kids to this movie, and the final line of the movie when Barbie's like making an appointment with a gynecologist, I can imagine the little girls turning their mother and say, "What's a gynecologist?"
Well, that's why it's PG-13. It's not meant for little kids.
Right. But it does things sometimes where it's like,
yes.
How many people in the general audience are going to know what they're really talking about when they mention the Snyder Cut people?
Well, I will say that in both times I've seen the movie, men burst out laughing and applauding, because I think a lot of guys have tried to argue with other friends of theirs over the Snyder Cut, and they just burst out applauding in both times I saw the film when they heard that joke. So,
yeah. So, I think it is interesting because she didn't have to put the Snyder Cut in there, if you understand what I'm saying. Like, why would you put the Snyder Cut in a movie that was going to make it's made $1 billion? Certainly she felt it was significant. And I just think that that's very interesting that she thinks that pop culture is so significant that it could be included in a film, in points that she needs to address. And I thought that was very clever. I think that she's.
Can I address that? There's something linked to it, because again, people think she's mocking YouTubers and those.
No,
she's not. In the same way that the song "Push" that she does, where people saying it's a song about, look at this toxic male singing about abusing women, it's making men look bad. No, as I've said before, the song, it was written as about a man who had been abused by women. Right. That's Rob Thomas had written the song about his own experiences, having been hurt and being abused by his mother and other women in his life. And so "I Push You Down" was him getting into their point of view. And so it's a commentary about pain. And the Snyder Cut is an example of men feeling, I know there are women that wanted the Snyder Cut, but a lot of the more passionate people that I talked to were men that were passionate about the Snyder Cut. And a lot of them felt they were being ignored. They felt they were being disrespected by the Hollywood, by others who didn't get. They felt that a great director had been shoved aside, unjustly, and they were championing that cause, and they felt like they were in the minority of society, and so they got a victory. They were so excited about it, and I think she's just commenting on the feelings of alienation that many men have in society. I think both of those things were comments.
And that's a good point. And what I'm really trying to say is that for a long time, people on YouTube have been complaining that nobody is paying attention to them. It's almost as if we're invisible. And here you have a film that's made $1 billion, one of the most popular films in the year, has decided to make a reference to pop culture. Those of us who are on YouTube, even, I think it is pretty significant, and maybe one of the first films in a while that shows we even exist, that pop culture is important. Is Barbie part of pop culture?
Well, I was going to say Scream 5 heavily leaned into the YouTube space and pop culture, because that was the entire motive of why the killers were doing what they were doing. And granted, it's a satire, much like Barbie's it's satirizing it from a different perspective. But
the funny thing is this, Catherine, the same person who did not, I was on a YouTube video, I won't name them, but I was on a YouTube video, and I had seen just come from Scream 5, and I really enjoyed that movie. I thought it was one of the better ones in the sequence. I liked Melissa Brera and all this, and I love the commentary because I got that it was satire, right? I got that it wasn't mocking the YouTubers; it was satire about the whole situation. And so I said how much I loved the movie, and this YouTuber who had not seen the film, to my knowledge, has yet to see this film, even now, came out and attacked me like a madman. I mean, so he was like throwing spittle, and he hadn't seen the film. He wouldn't see the film, but he'd heard about it, that it was an attack on him personally as a YouTuber. I was like, that's not what's happening. Why don't you watch the movie? And he just left the screen, right? This person, then when I posted my review of Barbie on my Facebook, this person who still, to my knowledge, has yet to see Scream 5 a year later, this person then posted a nasty comment under my Facebook saying, well, you're just as easily brainwashed by the woke as you were about Scream 5. I'm like, you're still hounding this? You haven't seen this film? You're still hounding this thing? He won't see Barbie. He won't see Scream 5, but he's got lots of opinions. And that was like, all right, it's time for the block button. It's time for the block button.
Yeah, and then it's funny when you read the the special thanks at the end of Scream 5, plenty of the filmmakers that are making fun of are in the special thanks because they're in on the joke, right? And it's because it's satire and they get it.
Yeah.
And so the Barbie thing, I admit that because it's Barbie, I didn't think they were going to go for something like Snyder Cut, because that seemed like something that would be far and away from each other. And like, how much of the general audience is going to understand what that means? You know, it's like, and which I still question. I'm not sure how many of them really get it. But it got a laugh from me because I'm like, oh wow, they went there, you know.
Maybe it's the Snyder Cut, the Snyder, the Zach-alite mom and dads who are going to see this, families that are huge big fans who are going to see this. Is it more likely that somebody who's into pop culture might see this? Because I think that this film might be meant for normies. What do you guys think?
It is meant for normies. But let's hear Captain's perspective.
Yeah, it's probably meant for that because again, it's making sure you get it. Like I mentioned, it's a little dumbed down in the second half. It's using music and monologues to get everything across, and then having references which people, the normies who are online to watch all this stuff, are going to understand, which maybe the more hoity-toity professional critics aren't going to get. You know, because certainly, even though professional critics were also shown the Snyder Cut and gave their reviews on it, they probably didn't dive into all the discourse that came afterwards. So whereas normal people like us and a movie made for movie fans are going to pick up on those types of things.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that because, and thank you for bringing out the point about Scream, which I haven't seen that film, but thanks for mentioning it. I just thought it was nice for her to do that because it shows that she's in touch with pop culture. You know, she might even be one of us. Who knows? Maybe she is a little bit nerdy. Maybe she does kind of like those things. I'm not sure, but I do kind of like Greta's vibe in acknowledging that these different pop culture segments do exist. Rebel Sky, hi Rebel Sky for a $4.99 super chat. Always good to see you, Rebel Sky says. And this is going to be okay. Hi, Cameron and Catherine. Hope you all had fabulous day. Thank you so much. I got your character, the glamorous and Anonymous Emella galore. Thank you. Our money Emella. More to come. Thank you. Hey, Rebel Sky. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for being here, and hope all is well with you. Thank you for the kind words. Now, one other thing that I was going to say is in regards to this cast, and people are saying that, the notion of having to recast, I think, wouldn't do well in this case because it does feel like we have an unfinished story. And certainly, as the three of us have been talking, they can't go and sort of do a kiddie film. You know, this now Barbie's kind of like gone into another element altogether. So we are kind of expecting that. I imagine now at $1 billion, we're going to see a sequel, only God knows when, but certainly it is exciting to see that. But one of the questions that someone had been asking me about the film and was that even though we did see the trailer, which was not necessarily clear what the film was about, Barbie herself is kind of feminist. Is that a valid argument? When you go to see a Barbie film, would you expect a feminist film?
Isn't Barbie kind of always been feminist? That's part of the point. I mean, she was out there. Women should be doctors. Women should be astronauts. Women could be the president of the United States. She was saying that decades ago. And then the movie says, in the straightforward dialogue that Catherine is critiquing, says, and it's okay to just be a mom, in case someone doesn't get the fact that it's okay to just be a mom too. So.
Catherine?
Well, yeah, she's always been feminist. That's why I wanted the movie to comment on that. Like when Sasha says, you represent all these horrible things, I thought, well, if stereotypical Barbie is coming from like the 1950s, 60s, whatever year it was that Barbie first came on the scene, she would be from the perspective, which is why partly why she breaks down. She doesn't know what she's talking about because it was a groundbreaking thing at the time, which they show you in the opening scene when they're parodying 2001, saying this was the first time that there was actually a conscious effort by a company to launch an entire toy line that was not around training women to be mothers. Right. Okay, 1959. Thank you. So it's like that they were the first time you launched a toy line training women to be more than just, stay-at-home moms or housewives. Mm-hmm. And I was expecting the movie to somehow perhaps provide a more frame of reference for that, for like the character Sasha to kind of have an epiphany, like this is where where stereotypical Barbie is coming from, because that's why she feels she has a positive effect. Because again, she's not going into like the world of 1959, the real world of 1959, which kind of needed that message at the time. She's stepping into like 2021, which is completely different. So it's like that's another that by not making it the film a period piece, which if they had made it a period piece and she goes into the worlds of the early 60s or whatever, she would see how it's having a positive effect. but now that it's not, she doesn't really understand why. Like, she listens to everything Sasha says, and she goes back and she's kind of, and it leans more into the direction of the Ken storyline in the second half rather than like pushing Barbie's message. Look, this is what I was trying to, which I thought I was doing, versus, well, maybe you should tell, because other than Sasha saying that one time, oh, you enforce unrealistic beauty standards and blah, 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 you never really feel that or get that from anybody else in the real world or any other point in the movie. It's only, it was really from that one moment because they decided to go down the road of Ken and the patriarchy and that whole thing. But yeah,
who else would we have gotten expressed from? I'm curious on who else would we have gotten expressed from. I mean, it really is, the human characters are very limited. I mean,
they are limited, but I mean, like, if Barbie is expecting to go into the real world and see how it's reflected, oh, women are going to be doing all it, when she sees, like, Sasha's the only person who really tells her that, oh, this isn't the case, but Barbie doesn't really see any evidence of that anywhere else either. It's not really, it's like Sasha's just literally expresses an opinion, but Barbie doesn't really get to see that on display anywhere else either. It's like she's even warned, oh, don't go talk to Sasha, she's going to destroy you. She does. And when Barbie leaves and goes outside to, collect herself, and she meets the Anne Roth character on the bench, it's like, okay, that's a great little scene, but she's not really getting the message about like, she wasn't sure if Sasha was telling the truth or not. She's just, how could somebody say such horrible things about me? But when she goes to further explore the real world, she doesn't really get to see on display what Sasha's talking about.
That's a fair point, but I think again, the movie is really about Sasha's growth and America Ferrera, the mom's growth. Right? I think it's about their growth because they're the human characters. I've had some Latino friends who've been like, they didn't show Latino because there are Latino Barbies, right? They didn't show Latino Barbies. Like, you got your two cast leads. They're the human leads that go on the journey. America Ferrera has her transformation to learn that it's okay to still be a mom, and it's okay to have her childlike imagination still. That's okay. She doesn't have to give that up as an adult. And then Sasha's character grows from being an immature, bratty, child spouting, political nonsense she doesn't understand, to singing with her mother and going back to, being in a family and committing to a family and inspiring Barbie to fight. Right. And so I think the journey was meant to be the transformation on the human beings, which ultimately, if you look at Wizard of Oz, it's Dorothy that changes. She had to learn the lesson of the, you could always go home. We think about the other three, they don't really change because they didn't need to change. The Scarecrow was always smart. Tin Man was always full of heart. And the lion was courageous the whole time. And that's the point of it, is that they just needed a placebo to convince themselves they were that. Whereas Dorothy had to learn to appreciate there's no place like home. She's the one that had to change. And in this way, the human characters change.
Are we going to see, this table part was one of my favorite moments in the film. Of course, as you could imagine, my favorite part was when one of the girls says, "I love Barbie," so, I love that.
And then she silences herself because she wants to fit in with the teenagers. Yes.
And I'm kind of curious as to what you guys think, because, and I know we talked about the musicals parts, and I thought to myself, this would make a good musical. I could see this being adapted for Broadway. It is quirky enough and odd enough that it could be adapted for a Broadway audience. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's going to happen?
Well, I mean, even the way she talks and the way Barbie presents herself everywhere, it certainly feels like a made-for-Broadway type performance. Like it's tailor-made for a musical adaptation, for sure.
Well, and in the list of movies that Greta referenced, that's in the chat, the link, she references several films, old classic musicals that were essentially done on a soundstage. And she loved Greta says, I love the fact it's obviously done on a soundstage. There's no effort to make it anything else. This is basically filming a musical on a stage, right? And that's the whole movie. And so this is primed to be Broadway. I mean, I'm sure someone is writing the book for it right now, and they already have wonderful songs. This is easily adapted to Broadway. I think you pretty much do this movie as a script on Broadway, and you're good to go.
Yeah, and I'm kind of I'm looking forward to the Broadway version of this. I promise you guys, if this becomes a musical, whether it premieres in London, whether it premieres in New York. I will be at that opening of the musical for Barbie, which I suspect is going to be opening sometime maybe over the next year. But I've just enjoyed so many elements of this film. And I think that there is something to be said for a film that brings a lot of excitement and discussion and money and, merchandise and, controversy sometimes, even just conversation. People are buying pink. And as I said, one of the most exciting things I've seen are the dads who are dressing in pink. We're seeing
Yeah,
all
yeah.
sorts of
Oh, the
amazing things.
grandmas coming with grandkids. I mean, this kind of experience. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think that that's so important. And I think that even though it's meant for people over the age of 13 or 15, you know, I don't think parents are in a position to tell their kids, no, don't, I can't take you to this film. I think children, the younger set, are begging their parents to go see this film. And I know this is true because I'm seeing kids in the theater. So that is something else I wanted to mention, which is, a parent's discretion. I'm not, it's your kid. You raise your child as you see fit. But children are seeing this film. Do I think there's any damage? I think that's just a bunch of stuff they won't understand in the film that their parents can explain. So, but it has a certain rating for a reason. However, a lot of kids are going to see this film. So it's not solely, and that's understandable. I think a lot of parents see this and they're like, we got to take our kids to see the Barbie film. They've been begging us. We have to take them before school starts. Some people have school already started, right, in the country. But for those who haven't and can still go and see the film, they're still going to take their kids. And I think that that's their decision. I'm not judging them for that. Parents have to do what's best for their own kids. It's their decision. So, but I did want to mention that I do think that there's a huge crowd of kids who are seeing these film as well.
And I think that not all children will get the jokes. I think there's enough fun stuff for them, like that they'll just enjoy the visuals of it. It's in some ways it's a lot like the experience of Inside Out, which was an adult film. Inside Out, I watched that film in the theater and I was a blubbering mess by the end of the movie. I mean, because it brought back all my childhood trauma, letting go of my imaginary friend, moving around with my parents, losing friends, being unable to express my emotions. By the end, I was soaked in tears by the end of the movie, right? It was overwhelmed me. And then the lights come up and I look around and all the parents are bawling. And the little kid's like, Mommy, why are you crying? They didn't get it. They just thought it was a fun movie about this bing bong and all this happening. They didn't understand how adult this movie was and how hard it was for adults to watch that movie, right? This is not going to have that kind of emotion. There are some weepy moments for me. There were some weepy moments in Barbie, but it doesn't have that kind of existentialism of Inside Out, which I think was absolutely ingenious.
Yeah, it really is. And so I did just want to thank you, Cameron, as well as Catherine, for being here. Any final thoughts about what we should expect, let's say even up to Christmas? Because how many days did they have? Was it 145 days? Was it 45 days? It's supposed to premiere on HBO Max, right? When it does, but let's say for the rest, maybe what is it? November is when it goes on. I can't remember the exact date, but that's a long time from now, and they can make a lot of extra, cash from that point on. Even so, I think people will still go to see the movie if it's in theaters. Regardless, people are going to buy it. Oh my goodness, the sales of the film are going to be high too. That's something to think about going forward. But certainly, thank you both. Any final thoughts on the film? Just how you think, any feelings or gut feelings or thoughts about this $1 billion accomplishment from Barbie? Catherine, final thoughts.
Yeah, it was funny. I'm not surprised that it made $1 billion as quickly as it did, but maybe okay, it's fun. We'll see.
Cameron.
Well, I've embraced this movie. I'm gonna see it a third time tonight. I may see it fourth time next week. And for me, I mean, just my opinion. I mean, this is for me is a true work of craft. I mean, you talk about whether this goes back, whether it will have this impact in the future. I think it's going to be remembered as a classic film, like Singing in the Rain. It's like those movies she lists. They're all classic films. It's going to be remembered, in that vein, 100 years from now, in my opinion. And so I just checked to answer your question. My understanding is that, at least as of the recent reports, Barbie will be available for pay-per-view starting in September, and then Enter Max will have it on Max as of now in October. I mean, they may push it further if they keep doing well theatrically. I mean, there is a cultural phenomenon that they would be wise to maximize before they pull it out of the theaters. There's no reason to leave $1 of theatrical gross out there when they can have this be the #1 movie again and again and again and again. I don't know that there's going to be a lot coming to compete with it for a while, so I would keep it in the theaters as long as possible. I would keep it till November, December if I were them, and they're probably thinking about that. But yeah, so I think people. The only thing I'll say is, you've heard both of our opinions. You've heard all three of our opinions. If you haven't seen the movie, go see it yourself. You don't have to like it. I know I'm very passionate about this film, and I get grouchy when people attack it or whatever. I get grouchy when I see people attacking it without having seen it or regurgitating other people's opinions. Catherine has a very intelligent, sophisticated take on why she liked parts of it and was not. Thought something was just okay. That's a sophisticated opinion. I can respect that opinion because I've talked to her about it. I know where it's coming from. So watch it yourself. I think like it. But allow yourself to have some fun. Just have some fun. We haven't had fun in a movie in a long time. Just go have some fun.
Yeah, and I was going to say that the film does have a lot of just wants you to enjoy yourself and not necessarily even, you can actually go into this film and not even pay attention to any of the stuff. The visuals are so much fun to watch. And I think that that's also another important part about the film. And yeah, we understand it's not for everybody. But I'm just so glad, honestly, of the impact it's having over the entertainment industry, over receipts, over people making money. This is a difficult time right now with what's going on with the strike. And I feel like this kind of boost in the entertainment world is so important. As I said, with the trifecta, with Oppenheimer, and of course, with The Sound of Freedom, I'm just so glad to see films like this doing well. And that's the most important thing going forward. Now, Catherine, where can people find you?
You can find me Slice and Eyed, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. You can find me on the Phantasmagorium Show YouTube channel. Plenty of playlists of reviews there you can watch. And you can find me co-hosting Unifying Force every second and fourth Sunday of the month at 8 a.m. Pacific on the Virtual Cantina Network YouTube channel.
Excellent, guys. So make sure you go over to the Phantasmagorium channel. Tom, I thought we had that one in the chat here because I don't see it. Can you please put it in the chat for me, Tom? Thank you. And Cameron, where can people find you?
Well, I threw it in the chat, and I believe Tom as well and Burnettwork threw it in the chat. So thank you. Best way to reach me is my Patreon, where I do all analyses of the movies, including Barbie, including other things. Every now and then I get some scoops about what's happening behind the scene. I share my storytelling, screenwriting tips as someone who's doing this professionally, even though I'm currently on strike. So come join me there. It's a wonderful community. Is a member of it, and we'd love to have more of you come in because there's a lot of smart people in the comments. Love for you to come bring that kind of commentary to the Patreon group.
Absolutely. And guys, please also do subscribe to my channel. This is actually going through my channel and the Burnettwork at the same time. So you can find me on Positive Fandom, but you can also find me here on the Burnettwork. And I just want to get the fantastic, there it is. So make sure you please do like and subscribe to Positive Fandom and the Burnettwork, but also subscribe to the Phantasmagorium channel. That's where you'll find Catherine. She's also on the Unified Force as well, I believe, which is another the Cantina. I can't remember
the Virtual Cantina Network. That's the YouTube channel.
The Virtual Cantina Network's YouTube channel, as well as the Phantasmagorium channel. So subscribe to both of those, and you can find Catherine there. And of course, you can find Cameron and Catherine here on the Burnettwork, and also Positive Fandom here with me as well. Guys, subscribe to Tom Jr. Jackson's channel. Tom Jr. Jackson has his own YouTube channel, and it is right here, guys. Please support our other YouTube creators. Tom is such a fantastic person, my collaborator, moderator, and good friend, Tom. We are all goof people, Tom. Thank you so much for your help. Thank you for everybody for the super chats for today. Barbie has made $1 billion. I'm going to go $1 billion, but
it's the Bar Billion. It's the Bar Billion. That's our new hashtag, Bar Billion.
It's so wonderful, guys. Just enjoying entertainment. A lot of other films are doing well too. Let's hope this momentum continues. We want to see success for everybody, all these production teams who worked so hard to make these films enjoyable for us. Thank you, everybody out there, for being here on this very special broadcast of Barbie Makes $1 Billion. It's just so wonderful to have all of you in the chat sharing your comments and views. And guys, remember, no matter where you are in the galaxy, and thank you, of course, Catherine and Cameron, for being here. I so enjoy having you here, and I so appreciate it. Guys, no matter where you are in the galaxy, always remember to please be kind. Take care, everybody.